I want people to really ask themselves, what what disturbs your spirit so much about the idea of a child also being a sexual being?
For me, one of the worst parts about this Toya person is that they are like the perfect Lolcow.
I've seen my For You page flooded with this Toya Oracle person, and a lot of people have said stuff like, oh, this is the new Lolcow, but I really don't think that they are. Because you see, in order to be a Lolcow, you have to lack awareness, if that makes sense. And this Toya Oracle person doesn't lack awareness, they're just insufferable.
Toya Oracle's issue isn't the fact that he is lazy and inept. It's the fact that he keeps trying to justify why he wants to be nude, to children.
By refusing to do labor for the U.S. government, I am standing in solidarity with Palestinians. Laying in bed all day and yipping onto the opposite of what the capitalist overlords.
What disturbs your spirit so much about the idea of a child watching a consensual act?
If you are lighter than me, you are colorist. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations. If you are thinner than me, you are fatphobic. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations. If you have more money, more material resources than me, then you are classist, and you owe me reparations. If you are American, then you are my imperialist. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations. If you are from the West, if you are of European descent, then you are racist. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations.
Imagine scrolling through TikTok and finding someone who calls themselves a spiritual guide. They position themselves as this raw voice for the voiceless, someone who claims to be pushing uncomfortable but important truth into the spotlight. That's the image that Toya Oracle, also known as Oracle or under the handle Sounds from Guinea, has built. At first, it can seem powerful. The language feels like it's about community, about liberation, and speaking out against oppression. You get the sense that you're watching someone who wants to challenge the system and give strength to people who have been ignored. But if you stick around long enough, the crack starts to show. Behind the talk of healing and freedom, there is this darker pattern, and this darker pattern is one that people have been pointing out for years. Instead of genuine care, what you actually find is manipulation, guilt tripping, and when I talk about the guilt tripping, it's disgusting, and also a behavior that many have said has left them calm, uneasy, or outright traumatized.
I do one-on-one consultations with individuals or institutions around deconstructing systems of supremacy. Topics that I am capable of discussing are sexual liberation, child liberation, fat liberation, colorism, texturism, featureism, classism and casteism, disability justice, gender liberation and deconstructing the gender binary and gender as a whole, and many other things that we can discuss. If you are interested in working with me, then you must sign up in my Linktree, and I'll put a screenshot of what that looks like above. In the form, you must fill out your first and last name, an email address, a date and time that you can commit to, as well as a detailed explanation of why you are coming to me and what you are looking for. The fee is $100 an hour for individuals, and it starts at $1,000 an hour for institutions. This money will go to take care of myself and my basic needs, and whatever is left will be redistributed to 2 families that are also from the Global South. One is a Haitian woman and refugee living in the Dominican Republic. The other is a Congolese girl and her family who are refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo. My DMs are closed, so that is the only way that you can reach out and contact me, and I'm only seeking clients at this time for connection. Thank you.
Over time, Toya has been accused of everything from scamming to predatory behavior. They've been called out for constantly pressuring their audience to send money, and they do this by using heavy emotional language that just makes people feel like they'll be abandoning the cause if they do not donate to them. It doesn't stop there. One of the most disturbing things that people have brought up is the way Toya talks about child liberation. For many people, the way that these statements were framed, they've come across as unsettling and even predatory.
Well, one of my mutuals who is now blocked, and also they're a light-skinned person, like, that's not a loss at all. It's clearing out the trash. Commented that, you know, while they think that children should have access to sexual education, they shouldn't have access to. How do you think they're going to get that sexual education if they do not have access to pornographic material? They need to know what a vagina looks like and what a vagina does. They need to know what a penis looks like and what a penis does. They need to know what genitalia looks like. They need to know what, like, the proper methods to engage in intercourse, which means that they're gonna have to be looking at porn. The fuck you mean? And of course, like, it could be supervised. So we can talk about, you know, giving children access to pornography and it being supervised, right? But y'all are just saying, oh no, they shouldn't have. How do you think that's a...
Add to that the way that they constantly wrap themselves in the language of oppression, that is, they turn their identity into both a shield and a weapon. You will start to see why so many people just feel very uncomfortable with them. If someone challenges them, they don't just push back. They often explode. They label people as enemies or betrayers while doubling down on their demands for money and sympathy. What makes Toya's story just stand out isn't just the mess of accusations or the chaos around their name. It's the way that they do embody some of the ugliest part of influencer culture. I'm talking about the constant performance of victimhood, the weaponization or the weaponizing of identity, the refusal to take accountability, and the endless call for support, whether it's emotional or financial, while they're also lashing out at everyone who questions them. This is not a personal story. This is a reminder of how power works on social media. This isn't just about one creator falling apart. It's about what happens when influence just turns into exploitation, when the language of liberation becomes a mask, and when people across the screen who wanted to believe in someone are left feeling manipulated, betrayed, and used. But that being said, a quick disclaimer. Before we get into this video, let me just make something really clear. This video is for commentary, analysis, and educational purposes only. I'm talking about allegations and information that is already out there in the public, but nothing I say here should be used as an excuse to harass, threaten, or pile onto Toya Oracle or anyone else that I do mention. Please do not take this as a call to action. That's not what I do here. The whole point of this video is to break down influencer culture and the way that people show up online, and also the kind of harmful behavior that can get overlooked when someone builds a certain kind of brand. So in case you're not familiar with pronouns, Toya goes by they them pronouns, so I would be using that to describe them. They also transitioned, so don't get confused thinking that they're a group or something. So they are literally one person, but they go by they them pronouns. And also shout out to post-traumatic melodrama 8931 for the request, because this one sent me spiraling into a full TikTok rabbit hole. I'm talking about videos upon videos upon videos, old stitches, new stitches, responses, old clips, and long callouts that all started piecing together the big picture. So with this big picture, what looked like at first like a few random messy posts has turned out to be part of a much larger story, and that's why I'm here to tell you guys about this person, and might I say this disgusting person. So that being said, let's start with who this person is. So who is Toya Oracle? Toya Oracle, they go by a few different names, like I said in the introduction of this video. Sometimes they go with just Oracle, sometimes the TikTok handle sounds from Guinea, which I think has been removed from TikTok, but another sounds from Guinea too that reposts all the atrocities this person has said and done. So at one point, they were even running something called the Shrine House. From what's floating around, their legal name might be Toya Abdaraya and is sometimes shortened to TJ. But the identity that people know them by is the one that they continue and they have carefully built online. So Toya presents themselves as a multiply marginalized person. They talk about being black, trans, or non-binary. They talk about being disabled, a survivor, and also a parent. And pin a note on that word parent, because in my own opinion, this person does not deserve to be a parent. I'm not gonna lie, because of the views they have about children and what children should do, which we'll speak about later on in this video. This person does not deserve to be a parent. And I'm not one that always comes and be like, oh, this person does not deserve to be a parent. But in this case, I think those children may be better off in the hands of like maybe a good and responsible family member, which I will get to later on in this video. And I don't say that out of nowhere. Let me just say that out there.
Who taught you how to have sex? Who taught you how to have sex? Because sex is a skill. Just like growing plants is a skill, reading is a skill, having sex is a skill. And a big reason why there's so much sexual violence is because people have not been taught how to have sex. And currently speaking, in the US, do we have places and spaces where youth who are sexually active can learn how to have sex? And I'm not just talking about the bare bones sexual education of, talking about contraceptives, talking about STDs, STIs. I'm talking about how can they learn how to do different acts, right?
Yeah, like a more creative part.
Right, like how to give oral, how to have vaginal sex, anal sex, foreplay. How are young people supposed to learn how to do those things if they have no examples of it? And again, I offer you that pornography can be a space where young people can learn how to perform sexual acts.
So basically, these parts of their identity aren't just mentioned here and there. They are the very center of their online persona. Their content often leans heavily on the idea of being highly marginalized, which has drawn in a loyal following of people who see themselves reflected in that struggle. At the same time, it also made them one of the most polarizing figures on TikTok, because the way that they do use that identity, I'm not gonna lie, it often raises eyebrows. Their early content was about storytelling and social commentary, and it also had like a touch of spirituality that was mixed in. The handle sounds from Guinea even ties back to Haitian spirituality, where Guinea as in the country, or Guinea refers to the ancestral homeland of enslaved Africans. The branding was meant to position them as an almost prophetic figure, someone with wisdom to share about society and liberation. But the reality is, it wasn't the supposed spiritual insight that got people talking. It was the non-stop drama around their behavior. Over time, Toya built this persona of being a constant victim. In their version of events, they are always under attack, they're always being targeted, always suffering more than anyone else. And it works in their favor, because framing every conflict through the lens of identity for sure is going to keep people being sympathetic and ready to defend them at any time they choose to open their mouth. The flip side of all this is that a lot of people also started noticing the pattern. Whenever something went wrong, Toya would use it as a proof that the world was out to get them. When I say the victim mentality that this person has, it is so disgusting. It didn't matter if it was a criticism or a disagreement or even a fair pushback, it would always be reframed as oppression. That's why you hear people describe Toya as a professional victim. There was even a video where the host went as far as calling them the king of playing victims, and this person pointed out how no matter the situation, Toya found a way to just position themselves at the center as the most wronged person in the room at that time. This habit of always spinning every narrative into persecution is what really sets the stage for the bigger controversies, because once you see that pattern, it becomes very impossible for you to ignore. Now let's talk about the controversy over money and donations. And guys, before I move into this stage, I just want to say, can you guys see I'm in my scarf era? I'm in my scarf era. It's giving chic, it's giving bougie, it's giving big, it's giving whatever Beyonce said.
I said I want something big. I want something that says I'm here. Beyonce.
But anyways, let's get into this video because I can't get enough of this look, okay? Let's talk about the money side of things because that's one of the biggest and longest running issues when it comes to Toya Oracle.
I say that I did nothing with my life. Rest isn't nothing. That has actually been one of my goals for a long time, to rest more. So I'm very happy for your sister who, was permanently disabled and decided to fulfill her dreams by going back to school and, working in healthcare. Good for her. We don't have the same dreams. My dream was to rest. My dream was to have people paying for me to rest. And yeah, I've met those goals. I have been able to raise thousands of dollars for myself over the years to rest, to stay housed, to feed myself. I actually was able to fulfill my dream of becoming a musician, and I dropped 2 albums. I was able to fulfill my dream of pursuing art and painting and drawing. And I learned, tattooing. I learned so many things about myself. Just because my idea of success is different from yours doesn't mean that it's not success.
From the very beginning, Toya has leaned heavily on their followers for financial support. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with asking for support here and there. People do it all the time. And I do it too, especially when it comes to what's going on in the Middle East, Sudan, and the Republic of Congo. Guys, I said in my last video that there are resources in my description box where you can either donate money or share, because the world is getting into a scary place and it is so disgusting how people's lives are being wasted away because of political and economic power. So please, if you could do me a favor, please, in my description box there are links. That link has been there for like over a year now. Please, if you could share it, if you could donate whatever you can, please. Thank you so much, because every single day I really bleed for what's going on. And these people, the country of Israel, they have extended it. Yesterday they Qatar, they Tunisia, they like so many places already, and this is very sad to see. So please, if you could just support by donating, even if it's $1, £1. Imagine 1,000 of you guys or like 10,000 of you guys donate like $1. Literally, that is going to be like $10,000. So if you could do that, please do that. Thank you so much. Or if you could share it, you don't know who will be on your story or whatever, please do that. Thank you so much. And that being said, let's go back to talking about this person. So where did I stop? So I think I said that Toya, from the very beginning, that they've leaned heavily on their followers for financial support. We're not just talking about the occasional cash app link in the bio. We're talking about like constant fundraising, constant appeals, and constant emergencies that apparently have required urgent donations. They've asked for help with housing, medical bills, food, daily living costs, and so much more. Sometimes these requests even came wrapped in the language of, if you care about me and my children, or if you care about marginalized people, you're going to help. At first, it's normal for people to sympathize, because if you see someone who is black, who is trans, who is disabled, and saying that they're in crisis, and the person also has like children, you will want to help. But over time, people started noticing a pattern. When it comes to the requests that Toya Oracle has put out, the requests have never ever stopped. They were fundraisers for the same issues again and again. And the way that Toya has presented these appeals, they've been loaded with guilt trips, emotional language. They've made it feel less like genuine need and more like pressure. A lot of people began to feel like they weren't just supporting someone in crisis. They felt like they were being used like this person's personal ATM. One YouTuber that I watched him on Sunday. His name is Justin Jordan. He did like a full-on expose and he described Toya as someone who constantly plays up being the most marginalized person, and he does this just to demand money. And honestly, that's how it comes across to, I don't know why I said that, but that's how it comes across to like a lot of people. If you do not donate, you risk being painted as unsupportive or even prejudiced, because refusing to give just gets twisted into proof that you do not care about black, trans, disabled lives.
And just to give a little bit of an explanation as to why Oracle claims that he's not working anymore. So Oracle before COVID was a teacher, and Oracle would make a series of TikToks giving different reasons as to why he quit. One being that the school wasn't stringent enough on its COVID policies. Two being that he had to fight parents over political beliefs, which there are a lot of teachers who have, like, I think, progressive beliefs, the same ones that, Oracle pretends to have, in my opinion, and they, like, people have to work. So I don't know if it's not clocking to Oracle that, like, 90% of people are clocking in. In this perfect world, I love it if people who were disabled did not have to work for a living, but unfortunately most of them do. So Oracle sitting here and acting like he is the arbiter of like what is the most oppressed people or what the most oppressed people are facing is kind of ridiculous given the fact that he is coasting off of wealth from people on the internet, which that's the main point I wanted to get from this video.
This creates this cohesive atmosphere where people just feel forced to pay just to avoid being labeled as hateful. And it doesn't help that stories started surfacing about how the money was being used. There have been discussions online. There is this beautiful woman that did a video on Toya Oracle. I think when I was requested to do a video on them, I went on TikTok and this was the first video that I've seen. For the life of me, I've forgotten your name. I'm going to put it here on my screen. If you're watching this, I just want to say that your looks are so beautiful. Like your looks are tea. Your looks are beautiful and you're such a very beautiful woman. Let me just tell you that. Period, point blank and poo, like period poo. Like your looks are so beautiful. But yeah, she did like a very extensive discussion on Toya Oracle, so you can go and watch her after you've watched mine. So basically, like I was saying, in online discussions, people have claimed that Toya doesn't hold a regular job and spends most of his days just resting while still expecting the community to cover everything from bills to Uber Eats. There's even a video that I watched on Toya Oracle where he was like, I don't have to get up and work. I don't have to do any of that. I can stay on my bed and make money from my bed. And what's the money he's making? Oh, sorry, I misgendered them. What's the money that they're making? The money that they're making is literally donations. Like you're tripping people to donate money to them. So when you add that up on top of like the non-stop financial appeals, the picture just starts looking less like mutual aid and more like grifting.
If you are lighter than me, you are colorist. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations. If you are thinner than me, you are fatphobic. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations. If you have more money, more material resources than me, then you are classist, and you owe me reparations. If you are American, then you are my imperialist. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations. If you are from the West, if you are of European descent, then you are racist. You are my oppressor, and you owe me reparations. If you are able-bodied, then you are ableist. You are my oppressor and you owe me reparations. If you are not interested in pleasing me in all the ways, financially, emotionally, physically, then you have no business being in my life.
It's just like the only question I should be hearing from y'all is how much? How much money do you want? How much money should I be sending you? Actually, I shouldn't even be hearing that. I should just be seeing deposits.
It is not delusion, insanity, or narcissism to know your worth. I'm the ultimate, the automatic, I'm sure of it. I am a visionary. I am an inspiration. I am influential. People look at me for inspiration. Follow me for inspiration.
This is why so many people use words like manipulative when they talk about Toya. Asking for help is not the problem. Don't get it twisted. Plenty of people, they genuinely need help. And there is nothing wrong with community support. The issue is the way that Toya has turned it into a cycle. The relentless ask, the guilt tripping, the lack of transparency, and the way that they've shamed people into giving all, it just feels the sense that it's less about survival and more about control. That's why Justin Jordan just went so far as to call Toya TikTok's newest scammer, because to many it looks like a repeated pattern of emotional exploitation that has been dressed up as solidarity. That being said, let's speak about Toya Oracle's identity, the fact that they're an oppressor and they perform oppression Olympics. So basically we're speaking about identity, oppression, and oppression Olympics. One of the main things that defines Toya Oracle's online presence is how often they lean on their identity. They talk about being black, being trans, being non-binary, being disabled, being a survivor. Honestly, the list goes on and on. And of course, there's nothing wrong with being open about who you are or the struggles you face. But with Toya, it doesn't stop at sharing their truth. Over and over and over again, people have pointed out that Toya uses their identity almost like a weapon. So basically, instead of simply asking for understanding, they turn it into a shield to deflect any accountability. And at the same time, they turn it into a way to elevate themselves as the most oppressed person in the room. This is where that term Oppression Olympics just keeps coming up, because the way it plays out is pretty predictable. If someone disagrees with Toya or questions their behavior, Toya doesn't address the actual point. Instead, they immediately bring it back to how marginalized they are, and they also imply that the other person must be speaking from a place of privilege or a place of bias. Suddenly, the disagreement isn't about the actions or the choices of this person. It's framed as an attack on Toya's identity, and that makes it nearly impossible to have a real conversation with this person. On Justin Jordan's video breakdown, Justin Jordan described Toya as someone who exploits being the most marginalized to shame, humiliate, and silence others. And the wild part is the people that they do go after aren't always coming from a position of privilege. Sometimes it's other marginalized people who are queer or people of color themselves, and Toya will still dismiss them as if their struggles don't matter because Toya's oppression is supposedly greater. That has alienated a lot of people who actually care about activism and community work, because it turns what should be solidarity into a contest of who has it worse. It's not just about playing the victim, it's about claiming a kind of moral immunity.
You think you are better than me, but you're not. No, you aren't. You were groomed to abuse me all your life. Yes, you were. You know nothing about community care. No, you don't. You know nothing about keeping people safe. No, you don't. If you took the time to shut your mouth just for once and listen to someone further marginalized, maybe you could be a better person if you really try. But you still need to let go of that supremacist mindset. Yes, you do.
Toya often frames themselves as someone who can never do anything wrong, because if you criticize them, then you are automatically attacking their identity. And if they go after you, it's framed as righteous because you as a person, as this queer, black, trans, left-leaning person, does not understand their level of oppression. And this is where people call them professional victims. Not because they talk about hardship, but because they've turned it into a system where they are always right, they are always suffering the most, and everyone else is either a villain or everyone else is irrelevant. And the problem is, this doesn't just affect Toya's personal reputation, it spills into the larger conversation about social justice. And this is when every single disagreement just gets labeled as racism or ableism. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that word well, but I think it's ableism. So basically, like I said, every single disagreement just gets labeled as racism or ableism, and these terms themselves, they lose power when it comes out from the mouth of Toya Oracle. So instead of shining a light on real oppression, it starts to feel like the words are being used as weapons in personal fights. And people have been saying that this actually backfires because people on the other end of the phone, like when you're watching Toya's behavior can become very cynical, because when you're watching their behavior, watching whatever comes out of their mouth, there's no way you will not start to roll your eyes at words like racism or transphobia, even when these issues are real and very urgent issues that are going on in the world.
When my friend and I went to the office of the Trans Healthcare Center, we were told that, unfortunately, intakes don't happen on Mondays, they happen on Thursdays. So we were enraged because we had just utilized precious resources that could have gone towards food to get there, and then we would have to pay even more money to get back, and we were not served. Thankfully, through me taking a break to just regulate my nervous system because I was in distress, as well as my friend who started to complain, out loud and very visibly, someone came up to us to accommodate us and said that although they do not take intakes on Mondays, they would accommodate us and give us our intake today.
I wonder which precious resource you had at your disposal
that you're currently using to make your video, to look up the website, and then you could
see their hours. you build these problems for yourself, and that
So, in a twisted way, Toya's constant self victimization just ends up undermining the very causes that they claim that they do fight for. What could have been advocacy has turned into noise. And instead of building solidarity, it will instead leave people just feeling drained or divided and even less willing to take real oppression seriously. That being said, let's speak about their manipulation tactics and abuse allegations. Because I'm not gonna lie, this is where things get really, really dark. Because beyond the money issues and the constant victim act, some of the most serious accusations against Toya Oracle are about manipulation and outright abuse. And these aren't just random, like, let's say, random, like, comments or random stitches or whatever. Over time, they've been so many people, even their former friends, their roommates, and even community members who once supported them, they've come forward with stories that paint a very troubling picture when it comes to Toya Oracle. The pattern that comes up again and again is the same. Toya allegedly uses guilt and identity as tools to get their way. If someone sets a boundary, Toya leans on their marginalized status to make the person feel guilty for saying no. It's not framed as, oh, I disagree with you. It's framed as, you're hurting me because I am black. You're hurting me because I am trans. You're hurting me because I am disabled. You're hurting me because I am this, I am that. And literally, when you put people in that position, especially people who care about social justice, you're basically making them feel like refusing you is the same as being prejudiced, which is not true. And that is where a lot of the manipulation comes in. Some of the stories are genuinely disturbing. One of the most talked about incidents just comes from a person who once let Toya live with them at what was called the Shrine House, which I spoke about earlier in this video. So this is alleged, but anyways, the person who described himself as a black trans parent later said that Toya created this unsafe environment for them and their children. They claimed that Toya would walk around shirtless and underdressed in front of minors without giving any warning, and also engaged in other behavior that crossed boundaries in ways that made everyone feel very uncomfortable. They eventually went public with their story. They called Toya an abuser who leaves harm in their wake. And honestly, it doesn't stop at housemate dramas. When it comes to relationships and consent, Toya has been accused of predatory behavior. There have been multiple people who have said that when Toya wanted intimacy and their partner hesitated, instead of respecting the no, Toya would guilt trip them. The alleged tactic was basically, if you don't do this, you're rejecting me because, of who I am, and that is oppressive.
I'm not a woman, but this is still an important conversation because I was assigned female at birth. And this is such an important conversation to have, and it actually reminded me of an experience I had a few years ago that made me feel really icky, and now I understand why. This person did not respect my yes. So I had a friend over, and we were hanging out, eating food. We had taken some shrooms, having a good time, and I'm feeling good, I'm feeling light, I'm feeling pleasure in my body. And I asked them if they were interested in engaging in a sexual act with me, and to this they responded. It was like some chest play for the algorithm, and they asked me in return, what do you think? And I was just stunned because I have never ever heard somebody ask a question to my question before, especially when my question is a yes or no question. And I remember just like saying no, like confused, and they said right answer. And that moment made me feel really icky. But because I didn't get any kind of explanation from them, I kind of just put it off as maybe it was just the right time, the vibes weren't right, whatever the case may be. But a couple months later, I asked this person if they would like to engage in a kink scene with me, and I was abruptly ghosted. And I ended up confronting them a few months after that, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, why did you ghost me when I asked you this question? And then they accused me of objectifying them. But now, after many, many years of processing, I realized that this person was uncomfortable with my direct communication around sex. Because of their inability to be direct about their needs and wants and their own no, they were uncomfortable with my yes. They were uncomfortable with me stating directly what I needed and wanted. And instead of acknowledging their own lack, they projected onto me and they accused me of objectifying them, and they judged me for having sexual needs. And to get even more complex, I'm a dark-skinned fat black person, which means that I am often mammified. And that means that people often see me as like a workhorse, but also lacking in sexual desire. People don't respect my no when I refuse to do labor for them, but they simultaneously don't respect my yes when I want to experience pleasure. And this is a part 2 of the conversation, focusing specifically on, my dark skin, fatness, and blackness. There's a particular experience that I have, and I'm also thinking that other people might experience this too, where people will hang around me and they don't actually like me, but they won't say so in order to continue having access to me because they are benefiting in some way, shape, or form from having access. And that is a form of coercion. And so it's so interesting that this person accused me of objectifying them because, in fact, it was a projection. I was being objectified. You don't actually like me as a human being because in that moment, they actually ghosted me when I was in the middle of crisis. I was being abused by an ex-roommate, and I wanted to process my feelings through a kink session. And yeah, I was immediately ghosted by them. And it just made me think back to all the other experiences we had in our relationship where I'm just like, oh, this person definitely mammied me, because they would say things to me like, oh, my relationship with you, it's so revolutionary, blah, blah, blah. I'm learning so many things from you. And I'm like, oh, that was their ulterior motive. They wanted to use me as an info mammy to get their education on, but they didn't actually see me as a full-fleshed human being with wants, needs, desires, outside of being a teacher to them, outside being an educator to them, outside of being somebody that they could extract from. And yeah, that is not consensual. That is not consensual. I did not consent to being an info mammy. I consented to being a friend to you, to experiencing pleasure and having pleasurable experiences with you. I consented to being able to come to you to express my emotions and for emotional support. But it seems like I can't do anything outside of being an educator. How is that not objectification? It seems like once I stepped outside of the role of being the info mammy, all hell broke loose.
And that kind of coercion just takes advantage of people's empathy and people's sense of justice, and it also crosses into really dangerous territory. Some have flat out labeled Toya as a sexual predator because of these patterns. There've been so many videos that, not so many videos I've made of this person, but a few videos, and it's literally picking up ball. They really get buzz on TikTok. You've seen more stitches than YouTube videos being made on this person. And also when I checked Reddit, I just saw 3 posts. They don't have a snack page yet, as at the last time I checked, but on different pages you've seen someone just bringing them up, and I've seen 3 of that. So people have started calling them out, and red flags, they've been red flags of grooming and coercion in their behavior. And then there are all the allegations about minors, which are even much more alarming. Toya's following has included vulnerable teenagers, and people have even accused them of blurring boundaries with those kids. There are also claims that Toya even cyberbullied minors who questioned them and also retaliated harshly against their young followers who didn't toe the line according to what Toya's expectations are. So when you're an adult influencer with authority and a platform, that kind of intimidation, I'm not gonna lie, is predatory. And put all of this together and the picture just looks grim. Across different platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, literally YouTube, you're going to find first-hand accounts describing Toya as manipulative, as abusive, as boundary crossing. The common thread is always the same. If you do not give Toya what they want, whether it's money, whether it's housing, whether it's emotional labor or sex, they'll literally spin it into this story where you are the oppressor, you are the problem, you're the one causing harm. And honestly, it's a playbook that just twists the language of mutual aid, twists the language of consent and anti-oppression into tools of control. And the end result is a trail of people who say that they felt exploited, they felt violated, or they felt deeply harmed by this person. Now, let's speak about their misuse of social justice terms and the discussion around it, because obviously I have said it in this video like time and time again, but let's just dig more into it. Another layer of Toya Oracle's behavior that has left people feeling very uneasy is how they throw around serious terms like racism, ableism, transphobia, abuse, and trauma in situations where they do not even seem to fit. These words, they do carry heavy weight, and when they're used correctly, they highlight real injustice. But when it comes to the case of Toya, I'm gonna say that these terms are constantly being used in personal conflict, and they're not used to point out systemic issues, but to shut down anyone who challenges them. The pattern usually looks like this. Someone sets a boundary, says no to a request, or pushes back on something that Toya has done, and instead of addressing the actual issue or, apologizing or acknowledging the faults or acknowledging their part in the whole scenario, Toya would fire back by calling them racist, or if they're the same race, they might call them colorist or ableist.
I just want to highlight a post that was made by one of these white supremacists where they say that they will put a belt to my ass, aka a whooping. Whoopings or whippings are the legacy of plantation slavery, of chattel slavery. So again, I want you to notice the language that they are using to harass, target, and abuse me. It is white supremacist language. These people have threatened me with incarceration.
And there is a story that's floating around where Toya went as far as saying that it was racist and ableist for someone not to do what they wanted. Think about how warped that is. Rather than recognizing that other people are allowed to say no, Toya frames it as if refusing them is an act of bigotry. And that's not just unfair, it's very manipulative because it puts the other person in a corner where they either give in or risk being branded as an oppressor. What makes this worse is that many of the people that Toya has attacked, they are not outsiders. They're often marginalized people themselves. They're either queer people, they're either people of color, they're either disabled people. And yet Toya will ignore all of that and reduce them to a caricature of privilege the moment that they do not fall in line. And that strips away the validity of their lived experience and turns every disagreement into another chapter of, oh, everyone is against me. And it doesn't stop with racism or ableism, because Toya has also been as quick to throw around words like abuse, like gaslighting, like trauma, like toxic whenever someone leaves their circle or calls them out. And I'm not talking about genuine abuse here. I'm talking about like ordinary situations, like maybe someone falls out with them, or someone decides not to host them anymore, or a friend distancing themselves. That just gets reframed as proof of oppression when it comes to Toya.
Oracle said that they didn't want to be my friend anymore because I don't wear masks. And even though they're a chronically ill and disabled person who I claim to want to be in community with, I just didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it. And we even made a song together. And they took down the song. I just don't understand why they won't let me have unlimited access to them. I just don't understand why they won't let me disrespect their boundaries. They're a serial narcissistic abuser. They're a serial narcissistic abuser. And this is what Imani Barber in Crutches and Spice meant when she said that the right would utilize ableism, and in this case, Satanism specifically, to try to exterminate opposition. People are equating me speaking truth to power with having a mental illness. And this is why pop psychiatry is so dangerous. This is why psychiatry as an entire field is so dangerous, because it is a colonial construct designed by white cis heterosexual men who were wealthy to criminalize African indigenous people for literally existing. I am a griot. I am an archivist. I am a storyteller. I hold collective memory to retell to others so that we do not repeat the same mistakes from our past. If that makes me insane, then so be it.
And by blurring the line between real harm and everyday conflict, Toya just creates this environment where every dispute is painted as catastrophic. It poisons the well because now community members can't tell what is legitimate and what is just Toya crying wolf. This has serious consequences. On a personal level, it damages the reputation of the people that they do target, because once you're called a racist or an abuser online, the label can stick even if it is baseless. On a deeper level, it undermines social justice as a whole, because when words like ableism or abuse are constantly misused, they will indeed lose their power. People become numb, people become skeptical or dismissive when these terms are applied in real urgent situations. What should spark empathy and accountability instead will make people just roll their eyes, because the language has been drained of all the seriousness that comes with it. And that's a double harm here, because first, it minimizes the struggle of others by suggesting only Toya's oppression accounts, and secondly, it weakens the credibility of movements that depends on people taking these terms seriously. And once that credibility is gone, it's not just Toya who suffers, it's every marginalized person who needs words, or who needs those words to name when something serious is happening to them. In the end, Toya's reckless use of social justice language has left behind a trail of confusion and mistrust. Communities that should be united in fighting real oppression, instead, they do find themselves torn apart. They find themselves exhausted and weary of believing anyone. Because when one person keeps twisting the vocabulary of liberation into personal weapons, it doesn't just cause chaos in that corner of TikTok, it ripples outward. It makes it harder for people to just take real harm seriously. And that might be one of the most damaging legacies that Toya has left behind. Now let's get to the worst of it all, and this is the one that literally, I'm not gonna lie, I was really pissed off, and I hope I'll be able to contain my anger and disdain for this person, especially because I'm very protective of children, and this person is a piece of shit, especially what their mind thinks about children. Also the fact that they have children and they are a parent, so this is very crazy. So let's talk about the child liberation controversy, because the most disturbing and unforgivable part of Toya Oracle's story has always been the way that they talk about children under the banner of what they do call child liberation.
And the best part of this plan is, no one can stop me.
Out of everything that Toya has said or done, I don't even care about them being a fool of themselves, but these takes are what has pushed the situation from being messy influencer behavior into something that feels genuinely dangerous. Toya has repeatedly claimed that children should be freed from traditional parental limits, even in areas that's been tied to sexuality. In one video that I watched, Toya flat out said that child liberation and sexual liberation are intimately linked. Does this even make sense? It doesn't even make sense. They're just throwing around big words, and if I explain it better for you guys are gonna be like, what the fuck? So that one line, that word alone, I'm not gonna lie, it does not make sense, and it sets off alarms. People who have been following the drama up until that point, they suddenly realized that this wasn't just about toxic behavior or manipulation. It was about advocating for something that could put children at risk.
We need to decriminalize public nudity, because when we criminalize it, it disproportionately affects people like children who do expose themselves in public. If you've never masturbated in school, if you've never dropped your pants in public as a child, are you really living? Impulse control, believing that everybody has impulse control, is actually ableism. Children, for example, lack impulse control, which is why they often do drop their pants in public or masturbate at school. Indigenous people, for example, some of them do not believe that nudity is wrong, that nudity is perverse. You do. You do, because you have a colonized mindset. And if you are not for that, then you truly are not radical.
I do not play with children. Like, I'm very protective of children. And when I see people who try to harm children, even with their words, you're very, very stupid. I don't even know what to say. Oh my God. Honestly, you're very dumb. Honestly, I don't even know what word to say. Oh my God. So Toya often points to their own childhood as justification for this. Okay, we're getting somewhere. They've said that they first saw pornography. I'm going to use the word pornography because you guys know what I mean. So the first time that they saw pornography at the age of 11 and claimed that it wasn't harmful, even suggesting that it was beneficial. From there, they argued that porn could or should be more accessible to children, as if denying minors that kind of exposure is some form of oppression. If you guys cannot even take from this, I feel so uncomfortable saying this, but taking it further, Toya even claimed that content creators who do not make their content appealing or accessible to children are bad content stars.
Well, one of my mutuals who is now blocked, and also they're a light-skinned person, like, that's not a loss at all. It's clearing out the trash. Commented that, while they think that children should have access to sexual education, they shouldn't have access to. How do you think they're going to get that sexual education if they do not have access to pornographic material? They need to know what a vagina looks like and what a vagina does. They need to know what a penis looks like and what a penis does. They need to know what genitalia looks like. They need to know what, like, the proper methods to engage in intercourse, which means that they're gonna have to be looking at porn. The fuck you mean? And of course, like, it could be supervised. So we can talk about, giving children access to pornography and it being supervised, right? But y'all are just saying, oh no, they shouldn't have. How do you think that
the implication in this statement isn't vague, yeah? It's not vague. It's a direct endorsement of children being included in spaces that should never involve them. And for them being a parent, is this what they're doing to their children? Is this what they make their children watch? That's why I'm like, for them to outright, in the open, say something like this, someone needs to check on those children. Because that crosses into a rhetoric that I recognize as dangerous, as predatory, and very harmful, especially to children. This person, in my own opinion, is a predator. I am so sorry. Do they know that their words are not just bizarre takes but a public safety issue? I'm sure even people who had defended Toya in other controversies wanted nothing to do with them after this. I am so sure that the idea of giving children access to porn or framing opposition to that as childish shocked even those who might have been sympathetic towards Toya's struggle in the past. The outrage should be very understandable, okay? It was about someone openly normalizing ideas that line up with grooming and exploitation. If you think that, okay, they changed their mind on this, or they were like, oh my bad, it's not what I meant. No, Toya didn't walk it back. Instead, they doubled down. They framed the criticism as puritanical or, like, let's say, discriminatory against children, as if anyone who disagreed with clinging to outdated morality rather than pointing out obvious harm was the worst person on earth.
Passionate about talking about these things, like I said before, because I am advocating for my inner child. Something else I wanted to say to the people who have been offering this critique of porn is not educational content is, who taught you how to have sex? Who taught you how to have sex? Because sex is a skill. Just like growing plants is a skill, reading is a skill, having sex is a skill. And a big reason why there's so much sexual violence is because people have not been taught how to have sex. And currently speaking, in the US, do we have places and spaces where youth who are sexually active can learn how to have sex? And I'm not just talking about the bare bones sexual education of, talking about contraceptives, talking about STDs, STIs. I'm talking about how can they learn how to do different acts, right?
Yeah, like a more creative part.
Right, like how to give oral, how to have vaginal sex, anal sex, foreplay. How are young people supposed to learn how to do those things if they have no examples of it? And again, I offer you that pornography can be a space where young people can learn how to perform sexual acts. It doesn't mean that they have to start having sex right away, but it can be a space to be like, what's that? Oh, what's that? I didn't know you could do that. Oh shit, like I didn't know you could stick that up there, And a lot of young people do crave that. I know that I did. Yeah. I know that my friends and I, we would be in each other's bedrooms practicing making out on the mirror, or practicing like grinding on the walls in our bedroom. Yeah. And so we crave that because kids are naturally curious. Yeah. You know, so we need resources. We need places and spaces where and I'm saying we because I'm literally speaking as my inner child right now, you know? Right. We need this this content. And yes, not all sex workers need to be creating this content, but there are people that can and do make this content. I'm just gonna plug in Crash Pad series, and I know that they have a subscription, so you have to subscribe in order to watch their videos. But I can potentially see Crash Pad series as being a really good educational material for youth who are interested in being sexually active and learning, you know, the ins and outs of sexual activity. Because not only does Crash Pad series center, you know, queer and trans people having sex, but in addition to the sexual scenes, they also offer videos showcasing interviews of the sex workers themselves, talking about how they created the scene together, how the scene came about. And so this is a perfect example of like kind of demystifying pornography as an industry and demystifying porn itself to be like, well, here's the scene, but this is behind the scenes. This is how we created this sex scene. And that I think is very, very educational and could be a really great resource for the youth that are interested in being sexually active.
That refusal to step back or even acknowledge why people were alarmed only deepened the sense that Toya wasn't just being provocative, they were seriously endorsing beliefs that could embolden predatory or predators or confuse vulnerable kids into thinking that this kind of exposure is normal. And I love the page that is reposting everything that this person is saying. So some from getting into they've reposted if Toya posts anything is on their page, because when you document everything, I'm talking about like screenshots, quotes, when they're being archived. I love the fact that people are doing this because people don't want these words to disappear, okay? Because the internet lives forever. The conversations they've turned from gossip about Toya being this manipulative person to urgent warnings about someone promoting a mindset that puts children in danger. The phrase child liberation, it has become synonymous with Toya's downfall, and it erased whatever credibility that they still had left and marked the point where almost everyone has abandoned them. This chapter of Toya's story just shows the consequences of words that crosses into harmful territory. Whatever influence they once had is being overshadowed by this statement because nothing about advocating for children's access to porn should be defended.
I just left a recent housing situation a few months ago where I was just walking around, you know, with my tatas out being free in my body, and then the person accused me of indecent exposure around their children. You are having sexual fantasies about me. We don't have a sexual relationship. I did not consent to be hypersexualized by you. You have no right to sexualize somebody's body without their consent. Y'all are the rapists. Y'all are the predators.
Logic. These people were incapable of coexisting with someone that was different from them. Not harmful, just different. To the point that Tay accused me of trying to hurt their children because I walked around the house without a shirt on. Mind you, 2 of their children did the same thing, but because I was the darkest person in the house, it was a problem because they were hypersexualizing me. This person is blocked already because I'm just laughing because this is the same language my abuser used when I was just walking around our home without a shirt on. And so it became my new performer name, you know, on the hub and on OS.
Sad ass house shite, them titties, man, I'm looking for the latest. Lit bitches in the city, who gon' really get the latest? Why the niggas at the strip, break your back if you know the truth of biggest. Sad ass house shite, them titties, man.
My sister is actually the one that showed me my first porn video, and she was a year younger than me. So she was 11 and I was 12. So we were both minors when we got exposed to porn. And instead of being reactive and being like, oh, well, kids shouldn't have any access to porn, what we should be doing is being proactive and encouraging porn content creators to make their porn content more accessible to young people who will be accessing that shit anyway. Like, personally, I think that you are not that great of a porn content creator if you are not doing this. It's an aspect of child liberation. Like, our ancestors.
What I'm struggling with is how people talk about child liberation, but then treat children like second-class citizens, then treat children like objects, then treat children like unconscious beings who can't make decisions for themselves. What about I found pornography and my sister showed it to me and the other kids at our middle school were showing it to each other? Are people not understanding? This just proves to me that y'all don't think children are people who think for themselves. And let me speak from my inner child, because y'all are pissing off my inner child. I can think for myself, okay? When I was accessing this content, I was in tune with my body.
Like a lot of children are, before y'all adults come into the world and burst their bubble and traumatize them and shame them. I was seeking out material, and of course there was material that I saw that I didn't like, and I scrolled on by and never watched it again. And then there was material that I was off to for hours. Like, what is y'all problem? Here's y'all problem. Y'all are so disconnected from your own inner children that y'all forgot what it was like. Y'all forgot what it was like to want to experience pleasure and joy. And for the adults in your life to squash that because they thought that they knew more than you. That they thought that you didn't have the ability to make choices for yourself because y'all grew up with fucking dictators. Oh, don't y'all think parents need to go the extra? Listen to yourselves. Y'all sound like rich, white, cis-het men. Rich, white, able-bodied, cis-het men.
I want people to really ask themselves, what disturbs your spirit so much about the idea of a child also being a sexual being? What disturbs your spirit so much about the idea of a child watching a consensual act? What meaning are you attaching to that act? What meaning are you attaching to it? And where does that meaning that you have attached to it come from? Why is it not okay for people, and I'm specifically talking about youth, to engage in a sexual act or to view in a sexual act that is for pleasure? That's not okay. But what is okay are for those conservatives to be pushing childhood marriage onto that same demographic. It is okay for conservatives to be encouraging non-consensual acts for the sake of procreation. It's Christianity. It's evangelical Christo-fascism. Yeah, I did find material that I didn't like. I did find material that was violent, and I scrolled on by. Because going back to my original point, children are conscious beings who make choices for themselves every single day. Yeah, and when I saw something that I didn't like, I scrolled. And I never, ever looked up that thing again. Yeah, and also, why do y'all have so much energy for pornographic material, but y'all don't keep the same energy for all other forms of media? Have y'all seen Tom and Jerry? Have y'all seen some of these cartoons and how violent and abusive they are? Like, I've seen Tom and Jerry cartoons where there's bombing happening, where there's so much, like, physical violence happening. But y'all aren't making sure that kids aren't having access to that material. I wonder why. I wonder why y'all are putting so much energy on porn and not just talking about all forms of media. It's because you're looking for a scapegoat. Because where does this end, right? If you say, oh, we need to do everything in our power for children to not have access to porn, eventually it's going to lead to y'all trying to dismantle the porn industry completely and take away a source of some people's livelihoods. That's where this conversation is going. That's where this conversation is going. Removing porn completely and criminalizing porn and anybody who makes it and anybody who watches it. That's where this conversation is leading, and that's what I want to focus on. I'm tired of having these hypothetical conversations, okay? I'm tired. Oh, what do we do? What do we do if the kids are already having access to it? So what do we do now? We educate them, okay? Oh my gosh, there's so much negative material out there. Okay, yeah, there is, and we educate them. Educate. Be proactive, not reactive. Because reactivity only leads to perpetuating even more systems of violence. Because guess who is using porn to make money? Predominantly people that look like me. Dark-skinned, fat, black, queer, disabled. Because it's accessible to me. It was accessible. It was an accessible form of pleasure to me as a child. And as an adult, it's an accessible form of making a living for myself so that I can survive in a world that wasn't built for me. And I will not be entertaining these conversations any longer. I won't. You don't think it needs child viewership is an opinion, okay? And the facts are that they are watching it. They have been watching it. They will continue to watch it. And on a larger scale, like I said before, children have had access to pornographic material since the beginning of time. Since fucking Babylon, okay? Before the internet, we were making sculptures. We were drawing on fucking cave walls. You don't think that human beings weren't drawing sexual acts, weren't sculpting sexual acts? You don't think that children weren't like viewing that? Have y'all not heard of the Kama Sutra? The book that South Asians used to teach children about, to teach young adults about sexual acts to prepare them for when, they were interested in engaging themselves. That's pornographic material. I don't know what to tell y'all. Go read a book. Go search the internet, because y'all clearly don't want to listen to me. But maybe if a white person tells you, right, maybe if you find a YouTube video, if you find a different source other than a person that you're already disgusted by, maybe it'll start to click. You know what other industries are unethical? The music industry, Hollywood, the movie industry. Are y'all now going to start advocating for children to not watch movies and to not listen to music either? Quickly. Answer, quickly. The book industry is unethical. TikTok is unethical. So are we just going to ban all forms of media? Is that what y'all want? Who wants to ban media? Who is currently trying to ban media right now? The US government. Book burnings, book bans. Who is trying to ban the porn industry completely right now? The
US government. If you go onto certain sites in certain states like Texas, it literally has this whole like spiel talking about how you have to upload your ID to view porn. Please ask yourselves, okay, who do y'all sound like? Who do y'all sound like right now when you say these things? Okay, who do y'all sound like when y'all are scapegoating this singular industry that just so happens to deal with a taboo subject? When every single industry in the United States specifically is unethical. I agree. All we can do is be supportive, which is what my video was stating. I was saying that I am in support of children, of youth, of young adults, of, whatever you want to call them, of smaller people. I'm in support of them accessing pornographic material if that is what they want. And part of that support is providing them with the tools in order to understand what they are watching. But somewhere along the line, people white supremacists heard that and immediately called me an pedophile. White supremacists who ironically sexualized my body without my consent because I decided to walk around this person's house without a shirt on. And I asked them if it was safe to do so because I have been hypersexualized by people before for walking around topless or walking around naked since I was a child. And they told me it was okay. And then the next thing I know, they're telling me that I'm exposing their children, that it's indecent exposure. So the people by far who are arguing against, children's right to access pornographic material, children's right to access, sexual education are the people doing the sexualizing. Yeah, it's the repressed people. It's the repressed people that don't even masturbate, that are ashamed of masturbating. It is the repressed people that literally, when they see porn, they shrink and they're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Those are the people that are the pedophiles. Those are the people that are, that are raping people. Those are the people that have such a twisted and fucked up relationship to their own bodies and to sex that they are advocating for other people to experience shame around their bodies and sex as well. So y'all can take all of this, like all of these comments that you're leaving on my page and go find those people and drop those comments to them, not me. What I'm not buying is the argument that y'all think that children shouldn't be watching it because it's unethical. I'm not buying that. I don't think that y'all have actually done enough to unpack your own sexual trauma to truly understand why you feel uncomfortable at the idea of a young person wanting to engage in sex and wanting to watch sex. Because by far, every single person that has, tried to counter my argument, when I've engaged with them in person, have been extremely sexually repressed people. Like, they get embarrassed when you talk about sex. They hide the fact that they're having it. They, hide their sex toys. Like, when I meet people and I'll be like, for me, my sex toys are like, special interest. It's like when people collect, people collect figurines and action figures. I be collecting sex toys. I'm like, you want to see my sex toy collection? I got this, I got that, I got that, And so, yeah, I'm simply not buying this, because like I said before, the people who have tried to counter my argument were people who I would not have sex with because of how repressed they are, of their lack of understanding of consent, especially informed consent. These people don't even be wanting to wear masks on their face. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. Yes, and sexual liberation is a key component to dismantling systems of oppression. As an anarchist, you should understand then that especially in a time where marginalized people are being pushed further and further into the margins, including children, making the decision to take away things that people need in order to, cope in these systems and survive these systems does more harm than good. Prohibition never made our problems go away. It only increased them. It only made people hide the fact that they were doing the things that they were prohibiting. The government was prohibiting. I'm a disabled person. I spent the majority of my time during this pandemic bedbound. And what was I doing? Watching pornography. I started off my original video sharing a personal experience of being a child that was the access to the world is very limited when you live in a body that I do. And so I was able to see people that looked like me. I was able to see people in the body that I have through pornography. And I do not fuck with people who advocate for taking those things away while not replacing them with anything else or anything better or anything inclusive or accessible to me. It is not very anarchist-like of you to advocate for taking away things that people are using to survive without replacing those things with anything even remotely better. It is not very anarchist of you to engage in carceral thinking. And it's also not very anarchist of you to assume that everyone engages with the world and sees the world as you do. Good for you that your mom was a nurse that taught you about your body. My mom was a doctor, and she assaulted me, and she sexually shamed me, and she was a pediatrician at that. We don't have the same experiences at all. In addition to that, going to the doctor and engaging with doctors and nurses and healthcare workers alike, because my ex was a healthcare worker. She was a nurse who physically assaulted me. Engaging with healthcare workers has been 10 times more traumatizing to me than watching pornography. So thank you for making a video response. And also thank you for naming, my intersections and that, yes, I have a target on my back. And that, the people that are attacking me are literally only perpetuating the very systems that they claim to be against. One thing I do want to say, however, is I don't agree. I don't agree with young Shalit about the fact that pornography is not educational material or that it can't be educational material, because I have found pornography that has been, in fact, educational. Crash Pad series is one that I can name, and you have to subscribe and pay for it. So that's already, like a barrier. What's it called? Like, children are not going to be able to access it, obviously, because you have to pay for it. But this is all to say that, like, there are people that are actually making sexual content that are both entertaining and educational. And surprise, surprise, those people, Crash Pad Series is a group that is run, and also the performers are predominantly queer and trans people, and featuring queer and trans people of color performers. Secondly, when I went to Wesleyan University, my undergrad, we actually had an event where we got to collectively watch a pornographic film together. It was an educational experience, and then talk about it. So again, like, there are literally classes that there are like media analysis classes, and again, pornography is just another form of media. And if you can analyze a movie like Sinners, if you can analyze a movie like Moana, then you can also analyze pornographic material for educational purposes. And again, people's rejection of that is rooted in their own fears and anxieties and their own traumas. This is a continuation of the conversations I've been having about the intersection between child liberation and sexual liberation. Here's a story. When I was around 8 years old and my sister was around 7, we were being babysat by our great-grandmother. She had a guest over. They were in the living room talking, watching shows, while my sister and I were plotting in her bedroom. We ran out of her bedroom, we pulled down our pants, and we mooned our great-grandmother and her guest, and we ran away laughing. That is an example of childhood sexuality. Often, we see sexuality and sex as intercourse, when in reality, sexuality is about eroticism and pleasure in our bodies and can look a multitude of different ways. We pulled down our pants and mooned our great-grandmother and her guests because it brought us pleasure. Y'all do know that criminalizing public nudity and sex impacts children, right? Because children often expose their genitals, and children also can like drop their pants in public. Like, I had a second grade student, he dropped his pants in the middle of class. So by criminalizing these things, y'all think y'all are keeping children safe, but actually y'all are criminalizing children. Children aren't aware of our social norms. Children aren't aware of things like shame. Shame is learned. Shame around our bodies is learned from our parents, grandparents, etc., and other adults in our lives. But when you are born into this earth, you are not born with a sense of shame around your bodies. So when y'all say, oh, how about the kids? How about the kids? No, you're not worried about the kids. You're worried about yourself and policing people. You write essays and blah, blah, away. And the thing that I can conclude from your essays is that you should not be around children because you are obsessed with control. You are obsessed with control. We are here on this earth to experience it. The only reason you feel like you cannot experience this life to the fullest is because of your white supremacist ideologies. And then parents who have been indoctrinated and have unlearned this indoctrination pass that shit onto their children, and their children then feel shame for wanting to indulge and experience life to the fullest. Thankfully, I did not allow my parents' shaming and guilting to prevent me from living my life to the fullest. And I want to teach young people that shame is man-made. While you and Tay and the others want to teach young people how to be Bible thumpers. So I already addressed in the video, the first video, that I was not encouraging their children to watch porn at all. Never came out of my mouth. I was defending the right for sex workers to exist and for people who watch porn to exist. Now I'm going to address your second point about that those children were not my own children. I don't believe that people can own children. That's another aspect of child liberation. You cannot own another person. Yes, Tay brought those children into the world, but those children are not theirs to own. The children are of the community. And in a matriarchal society, anyone in the village is responsible for caring for children. And if I see a parent is not doing their due diligence in educating their children, then I, as another person in the village, need to step in and address the things that I'm seeing, which I did, which Tay wasn't comfortable with because they are a patriarchal parent who believes that they own their children. I don't play about my kids. Yeah, you don't play about your kids so much that you won't allow another person to step in and intervene when you lack the skills and knowledge to care for them. And you'd rather neglect them emotionally, physically, and yes, even their sexual health. And then you want to cry about the fact that you don't have a village. You know why? Because you're rejecting it. You rejected the village. And even more than that, you tried to kill your village by sicking the cops, the slave catchers, onto them.
Is a kind of line that you can never come up from. Toya Oracle isn't just another messy figure in the influencer world anymore. To me, they're a real threat. They're a real threat, and they're someone whose words alone could normalize exploitation. And that stigma is never going away. Okay, so let's speak about their responses to people who criticize them and how they treat their detractors, because Toya Oracle's reaction to pushback has become its own running theme. Anytime someone speaks up about their behavior, things just don't stop at disagreement. What usually happens is that Toya will flip the script, they will turn the situation into an identity attack, and then goes on the offensive. Instead of taking a step back or addressing what was really said, they tend to lash out. They tend to paint themselves as a victim and use their platform to drag the other person through the mud. On TikTok and Twitter especially, you can see this pattern play out. If someone posts a thread or a video calling out something that Toya has done, Toya doesn't just ignore it or quietly respond. They'll literally stitch the video and they'll insult this person. They'll make long posts filled with accusations and sometimes even rally their audience into piling on. And if you choose to use my video to answer to all the nonsense that you're doing, Toya, if you're watching me, I do not care. But People who have spoken out before, they said that they were suddenly swarmed with Toya supporters, repeating Toya's words back at them and accusing them of being racist, transphobic, or ableist because they simply disagreed with this person. Why would you even want to be associated with that kind of person? Honestly, the goal seems clear: isolate the critic, label them, and make speaking up feel too costly to risk again. There are also times where Toya's pushback just goes further than online arguments. People have accused them of spreading rumors, twisting facts, or even leaking private details to smear someone who dared to challenge them. And that kind of retaliation doesn't just sting in the moment, it causes real fear. Some people admitted that they've actually had to stay silent about their experiences with Toya for months because they were worried about becoming the next target. It wasn't until multiple exposés just started surfacing that others just started feeling safe to add their own voices, knowing that they wouldn't be standing alone against Toya's backlash. And that's why sometimes it's good to call these people out, because it gives other people the opportunity to speak out. Another tactic that Toya has used, or Toya falls back on, is deflection. So basically, when the criticism is about something concrete like misleading people about donations or crossing boundaries with minors, Toya will sidestep entirely. Instead of answering, they'll make it about how oppressed they are. There's even a time they compared themselves to the people in Palestine. They were like, oh, I'm displaced just like the people in Palestine. That's so disgusting.
Displaced, and every time they're displaced, their conditions get worse and worse and worse. What happens when every time a person is displaced and moved to a new location, somebody in that location is threatening to kill them, and so that they have to leave and then go to another place where somebody else is threatening to kill them, and then they go to another place and somebody else. That has literally been my entire life. Moving constantly, escaping abuse constantly, fleeing genocide constantly, fleeing people making attempts on my life, whether overtly or covertly, constantly. Like, there is a reason why I no longer had money to live where I lived, and now I live in a different place and people are still trying to starve me. It's because I'm experiencing genocide. And I don't have to imagine who's causing the genocide. It's you. It's people like you who watch me from the screen, who judge me, who hypercriticize me, who harass me. It's people who have turned me away from community resources because they've believed the white imagination of others that I am a monster, that I am a beast, that I am a criminal.
Because they're used to saying, oh, I'm being oppressed. They're used to saying how disgusting it is that people want a black trans person to suffer, or how the community is failing them. The core issue disappears and the conversation just shifts to Toya's pain, leaving the original concerns untouched. Those who refuse to drop it often find themselves blocked or turned into the next target of one of Toya's tirades. One example that captures this perfectly was when a former friend came forward with a detailed account of how Toya had manipulated and harmed them, and instead of reflecting or apologizing, Toya went live and branded this person as an oppressor, told their audience not to believe a word, and framed the entire story as a hateful attack. Honestly, this is just classic Toya. Yeah, classic Toya is mixed with aggression and mixed with self-victimization, and classic Toya leaves no room for accountability.
This is Adeyanju Aibusi, a thin, black, Nigerian American person who grew up in the white DC suburbs with their relatives. They went to predominantly white institutions, just like myself, honestly. Like, I grew up partly in the suburbs for half of my life, but I did not subscribe.
So this is a very dangerous person. Toya is a Haitian non-binary person who's like in their 30s or whatever. And they are a very beautiful person. They are a dark-skinned person, darker than me. They are beautiful. They have helped a lot of people in the fundraising community. They are extremely charismatic, and they're also an abuser. It's extremely unsafe to be in a situation in which you are involved with someone who has a deep decolonial and spiritual, like, public figure. Not only that, but like they seem very in touch spiritually and in touch with like these values of colonization that are positive, that are moving our world. But you also see them becoming possessive. You also see them becoming pedophilic. You also see them intentionally tearing communities apart and intentionally convincing other people to give them their money and give them their body and give them their labor and give them their time. And it's like, it doesn't actually matter if you're white or black or light skinned or dark skinned. If you're abusive, you are abusive. I know a handful of European people who would never do the list of abusive things that Toya has done. I met Toya, I think like through, I don't know how long it's been, it was a few years ago on Instagram, and we were both creators, and we were both talking about abuse and trauma from our mothers, and their writing really resonated with me. We became to get closer. We started a mutual aid project together. We even started to like each other, like romantically and sexually, and that was fun for a while until I realized they were an abusive person. And when they started to, because my partner was okay with me and Toy having a sexual relationship, but when I realized they were starting to emotionally abuse me and emotionally abuse my partner, I stopped talking to them. And as of this year and last year, I have seen so many different things about Toya being a pedophile, and Toya being a landlord, and Toya abusing other people from the community we both used to be a part of before Toya turned them all against me. These are not the people we want to have leading our liberation moments. These are not the people we want to have in our intimate lives. These are not the people that we want to have around our children. And it's extremely concerning to me that every few months or every few years, Toya changes their name from the Shrine House to Oracle 9 to whatever, and they get a following and they get a sympathy, and like the cycle starts over and over and over again. So like I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want anyone else's personhood to be ruined because of them. They made me really cry and angry and really confused, and they made me really feel alone and tired out. And that is not what we, as people who are praying and acting for the incoming era of liberation, to do. We should not be like in a situation in which we are crying over like Black people who say that they care about other Black people who actually just like abusing other Black people. Toya is, I don't know where they live at now, I think, but they lived in New York City for a while. But I don't give a fuck that they're disabled. I don't give a fuck that they're dark skinned. I don't give a fuck that they're trans. I don't give a fuck that they're from Haiti. They're an abuser. And their abuse that I've seen being exposed by the TikTok page, exposing the Shrine House or exposing Toya, I'll look it up. And these things I've seen on Twitter, and it's just like, you are the problem, bro. You are the fucking problem. Why would I want to be near you, endorse you, or humanize you when you are the fucking abuser and you are the fucking problem?
The irony is that these reactions have only made Toya's situation worse. Every time they try to silence someone through intimidation or turn a critic into a villain, more people will just document it. There will be screenshots, there will be recordings, there will be threads piled up until Toya's reputation for lashing out became part of the story itself. Now, people don't even talk about Toya without warning that mentioning their name might invite a meltdown. Their refusal to handle criticism with even a hint of humility has done more damage than the original allegations ever could. And this has cemented the image of someone who would rather burn everything down than admit to doing harm. Conclusion. Toya Oracle's story isn't just another piece of influencer gossip. This is a case study in how dangerous things can get when identity, parasocial relationships, and online powers are being twisted for self-interest. At the start, Toya introduced themselves as a spiritual guide, someone offering wisdom and speaking up for people who felt unseen. They leaned into a role of highly marginalized oracle, telling personal stories, mixing in spiritual language and building a following that saw them as both inspirational and relatable. But what has unfolded over time is not inspiration, it's a cycle of manipulation that has left a trail of people feeling hurt, disillusioned, and angry. And this pattern has become so hard to ignore. At this point, Toya has lost credibility. I don't even know if maybe they had one due to the fact that they were a spiritual commentator, and this persona that they have of being this professional victim, it has collapsed under the weight of their own words and actions. What makes this story important isn't just Toya themselves, it's about what it says about online culture. Social media gives charismatic people the power to cultivate trust and build movement, but it also makes it easier for those same people to exploit the truth. When someone positions themselves as untouchable by hiding behind identity and silencing voices with labels and taking advantages of vulnerable followers, it's a reminder of how easily good faith can be abused. Toya Oracle is definitely a warning. Not every self-proclaimed advocate is acting in good faith. Not every voice that claims to be for the marginalized is actually protecting them. And when someone crosses the line or crosses lines as blatant as endorsing child exposure to corn, the community has every right to respond, and not only respond with alarm and condemnation. Toya's story just shows that reputation can crumble quickly when manipulation, exploitation, and dangerous rhetorics do pile up. It's very messy, it's very uncomfortable, and it's also necessary to confront, because ignoring it only leaves more people at risk. So guys, that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate you guys. Thank you. I've said that like a million times already. If you're not subscribed, can you subscribe to this channel, please? We're almost at 50,000 subscribers. I cannot believe that. Thank you so much. Like this video if you care, you guys. You mean the whole world to me. And y'all can see I'm in my, I don't know, man. Oh, actually, I think I should have worn like a bigger earring. How did I forget that? I think I should have worn like a bigger earring, because when the bigger earring would have been I should have worn a bigger earring. On my next video I'm going to wear a bigger earring because I'm recording a video right after this. But I think I should have worn like a bigger earring. I don't know why I forgot that. And girl, I started my ear stretch journey. I don't know if you guys can see. So I started stretching my ear. So I'm on 3 millimeters now, and then I'm going to go to 6, and I'm going to go to 10, and I'm stopping at 10. I may go up to 12, but I'm not sure yet. But yeah, I should have worn a big earring. I should have done that. I totally forgot. But yo guys, this is me. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. If you want me to speak about someone else, please comment down in the description, in the comment section. I've had so many requests of people telling me to speak about people, but I think I should make this clear. I do not spill tea. I think people think I spill tea. I don't spill tea. I've had people like in my email saying, oh, this is what's happened to this person, that's what happened to this person you spoke about, and it is in a way like they think I'm going to spill the tea. I do not spill tea. I'm a commentary channel. I just get like a topic and create a deeper discussion about it. That's what I do. But thank you so much for reaching out to me. I really do appreciate. And now I'm just going to go and wear my big earring and record my second video, which is about our nose. Okay, and that being said, thank you so much. I really do love and appreciate each and every one of you. We're almost at 50,000 subscribers. Drop a black emoji. I want to see my comment section swamped with black emojis. Okay, thank you so much. I really love and appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, bye.
Toya Oracle's issue isn't the fact that he is lazy and inept. It's the fact that he keeps trying to justify why he wants to be nude, well, to children. Now, if you don't know who Toya Oracle is, let me take you down the rabbit hole. Now, Toya Oracle is an individual who just has access to the internet and somehow calls that content creation. Most on the internet would beg to differ. Now, a lot of Toya Oracle's content is really stemmed around their need to be nude, if you will. And in a lot of Toya Oracle's videos, he goes on to say that he's a highly educated person and then lists off their accreditation, having a bachelor's in art, and African American Studies, sociology, and a master's in art as a teacher. So they really center their content around early childhood development, if you will. And Toya uses their education not in childhood psychology, just childhood development and being an art teacher, if you will, to why their need to be nude is a must. Toya goes on in several parts of his videos to say that if we stop criminalizing nudity, then we would live in a better place. Now, you're probably wondering, well, how do children come into play? In a lot of Toya's videos, they often reference a child's need to be free, right? Children do all kinds of stuff. Children, run around. Sometimes babies run around naked. Babies strip themselves of their diapers, which is pretty standard for babies. But Toya uses children and their need to understand textures, right? Diapers, ripping off their clothes, ripping off their socks, as a way to justify why they, as a beached whale, should be walking around nude. Now, Toya goes on in his videos and says that the reason why we don't want to see him nude is because we are a part of a patriarchal society where we police bodies. Which is true. We do live in a patriarchal society where we police bodies. But what Toya fails to mention is that in society that, again, we've all built together, in a society, we also have limits on what it is we want to see in the public. Now, when other people argue about body positivity, they're arguing about what it is that is deemed appropriate in the terms of clothes or fashion and stuff like that. But Toya uses that argument about body positivity and says, basically, you should see me nude, because if you don't see me nude, you're being fat phobic and you're policing my body. Even though as a society, we've all collectively decided that in the general public, we should all be clothed. Now, Toya talks a lot about in their content how they crowdfund and get mutual aid, and Toya is also funded by his mother. They are actually privileged. That's the part of the story they don't want you to hear. But if you made it this far in this video, tell me, have you seen Toya Oracle, and what are your thoughts?